This is the Your Sports Resource Podcast, where each week you'll learn actionable strategies that you can implement so the operations of your club support your coaching staff and the direction of your organization. We are committed to excellence in youth sports leadership. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Sports Resource Podcast. My name is Renata Porter, and today I am very fortunate to have a great guest, JP Nerbun, who is the owner-founder of TOC Culture Consulting. Now, JP is a best-selling author, leadership coach, and founder of TOC Culture Consulting, a leading global sports consulting and leadership coaching business. His mission is to support leaders and their teams to achieve their full potential through one-on-one coaching and consulting through the community. And welcome, JP. I really appreciate you being on the call.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is going to be a lot of fun to speak to someone doing some similar work. So this will be great.
Yes. We kind of travel in the same circles on different sides of the earth sometimes, but yeah. So give us an overview about you and your business and why are you focusing on sports?
Yeah, I grew up in sports, played sports. Highest level I got was Division I at the University of South Carolina in basketball, and then I started coached about 15 years. And during that period, had my own leadership and culture crisis where things just were not working out well for me. And a long story short, I had tried everything that I could to fix my culture problem, the issue with my players and their entitlement, their lack of buy-in, and the crazy sports parents. And so I tried curriculums, I tried, classroom sessions, and, really everything you could think of, book studies that I think a lot of coaches tend to gravitate towards. And yet what was most impactful for me was actually just hiring a coach to coach me, someone that could help me to see some of my blind spots and take different perspectives and kind of hold me accountable to some growth that I needed to have an experience if I was going to be an effective leader and to build a culture. And so that process got me just super amped up on leadership and culture. And so then I just started doing a deep dive and study on it, and with starting my own podcast, starting a blog. And eventually I decided I want to go coach coaches as well.
Good for you. I mean, it isn't, as you learn now that you've put on your other hat, that when you walk in, I don't know for you, but for me, when I walk into an organization, usually it's, it might be a coach blaming a board and then a board blaming a coach. And when I walk in, they think I'm going to take care of the other side, right? And it's kind of like, we all have a part to play in this. Let's kind of evaluate the entire situation. So how did you handle that when you were coming up before you were a consultant? Like, oh, I might need to actually do some, like, how did you get yourself through that? Was that a big hurdle for you to step back and go, oh, I have ownership in this?
Yeah, that's a really great question. There were a few people in the journey that really helped me to discover that I was the biggest obstacle within the culture. And one was just my athletic director, and just some, calm, supportive conversations, just asking me to reflect on some of the ways that I was leading and how my personal responsibility into the issues. It was once another one was a parent of an athlete that had built a relationship with me and had been in my corner and was still in my corner, but just decided to sit me down and have a tough conversation. And then just, I hired a coach thinking that they were going to help give me all the tools that I needed to fix the culture and the team and the players and change the players. And he gave me some of that. But he also then stepped in and really actually was not a consultant. He was a coach. He got me to really do some reflection and become more self-aware of my potential limiters and the things where I was creating problems for myself and others.
Yeah. So what are some words of advice that you would give to coaches that are like kind of maybe in that state that you were in, or when, you as a consultant, when you're walking in and you feel like, or they feel like their culture just needs to be improved? Like, what are some of the things that you really try to focus in on or hone in on? I mean, it can be from the coach, it can be from the team, it can be from any perspective, but where do you try to hone in on to help them kind of mentally be open to accepting the transition of moving them forward?
Yeah, I think a lot of people reach out to me because they've read my book or listen to the podcast, and they're looking for the tools. They're looking for the things to change others, and
Right.
because they recognize, yeah, hey, I think there's these three things. There's what we know, there's what we know we don't know, and there's what we don't know we don't know. And the third one is the most dangerous. But most
Right.
people come to me because they know they don't know how to build culture, or they're struggling and they thought they used to, but now it's
Yeah.
but it's really helping them to recognize and become more self-aware. So ways we do that with some of my clients is 360 feedback from parents, athletes, administrators. There's just some self-reflection intake type forms that we do, as well as we're using personality diversity assessment tools, the things like the DISC and things like that. So really just trying to help me fully understand what's going on for that individual, but in presenting that information back, helping them to kind of recognize some hard truths in that moment. And once there's awareness, though, most people, when they have strong awareness, they're ready to take ownership. They're ready to take responsibility for the problems they've caused. And once they've done that, once you've got ownership, then you're rolling. Like people are ready to take action and fix things.
Right. So through your time going through this work, have you been able to feel like you can narrow down if there's a root cause for poor culture within sports organizations? It's kind of a loaded question because I don't know that I could answer that. So
yeah, well, I mean, if I had to sum it up in one word, I would just say intentionality, like a lack of intentionality. I think most coaches step into coaching because they want to make an impact. They want to help athletes. And yet those coaches are not intentional in reminding themselves and making sure that stays and remains the priority. The other, all coaches, there's something in them as servants, right? We're not, even the coaches that are getting paid full time. I always say, like, coaches have so many skills to be. You're not just coaching, you're teaching, you're running a program, you're fundraising, you're recruiting, you're a salesman, you do all these things.
Yeah.
You could make so much more money in so many other professions. So I feel like most people are in coaching that are good natured, they're servants, but they really lack intentionality. And that is saying, hey, this is my intended purpose. This is what I want, my vision for what we're trying to build within our program. This is the type of culture we want to create. How do I do that every single day with first off, how I show up, how I take care of myself, how I'm working on myself, and then within everything we do within our culture, to the second players show up, before they show up, when practice, post practice, on team trips, in emails to parents. Like, every little thing you do needs to be aligned with your intended outcomes, your vision, your mission. And we have a lack of intentionality because we don't have that alignment.
Yeah. And I think sometimes, coaches, they only know what they came up with, right? Or came up under, right? So they know, they only have their experiences from their previous coaches. And unfortunately, I feel sometimes coaching is still, I would call it old school. Like, it's just the barker on the sidelines, like someone who's just like pushing and crushing and like loud, and and sports has elevated to where you have to think of, you don't just have a small, like you said, there's a bunch of things that they're doing, right? They're running a business. It's not just a small subset of their role. Now, they're in it for the performance or the working with the kids, because that's what brings them the joy, to see them excel and exceed, and everybody being successful, either individually or as a team or both. But I think, I love the fact that you use the word intentional, because one of the things that I push when I come in is like, listen, we're going to do some of this work for your planning your culture, you have to be purposeful is the word that I use in your approach. And when we do this work, it has to be more than just words on paper. Like, it doesn't do any good. I always use the story of, I remember one day showing up at work and there were values written on a poster in the elevator. And I'm going, okay, where did these come from? There's no announcement, no involvement in everybody helping to create these values. They were just kind of pushed out. And guess what? Our leadership doesn't even live up to those, right? So my big thing is, okay, we can do this work, but if you're in intention and you're not purposefully going to take this from just words on a sheet of paper and make it part of your actions, it's not really kind of doing any good. So it's really good to hear that you mirror that sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, that's the biggest breakdown there, and you know, for those coaches that are listening, I mean, they've experienced that. We've experienced it. You don't feel those values. You don't see them demonstrated, and it really just comes down to. And I think that's where the personal responsibility and ownership is. The great John Wooden used to say, you know, because he had this pyramid of success. He used to say handouts and pyramids of success are meaningless unless those values are represented and demonstrated in the behaviors of the leader. Ultimately, the team becomes a representation of the leader. So it's such a call to action for us as coaches to make sure that we're first modeling it, and then we're saying, okay, and from a systematic standpoint, all our processes, the players we recruit, how we onboard players and parents, and how we train, everything should be aligned to that mission, vision, values.
Yeah. And it's crazy how things just kind of start falling in place, because at first, when you're purposeful about it, it probably feels very forced and unnatural, I guess. But once you are really intentional about what you're doing and putting one step in front of the other, things just like the blocks just kind of fall. Like everything just starts to align. Now, it doesn't mean that life is going to be beautiful and rosy. You'll still have things to fix. But, you know, there's something to be said that once you get that culture rolling in the right direction, man, it's just an absolute weightlifter of emotion. I believe it is. And I don't know about you. Have you actually seen physically the difference in an organization when they start getting down the right track?
Yeah, it's so much about knowing who you are. And I feel like when you know who you are, you know what to do.
Right.
You know, and when I say know who you are, you know your values, you know what's really important. And you know, just recently I've been working with USA Women's Field Hockey. They just had an amazing run to qualify for Paris Olympics here coming up. And, you know, it comes down to those values that they co-created when Dave Passamore took over, you know, their head coach, is just the players just constantly come back to those values, and it helps them to show, demonstrate, how do we want to show up in this game? How do we want to show up in this practice? How do we want to respond to this loss or this challenge? Yeah. And, you know, who do we want a part of this culture? Who is the right fit? And everything just really just seems to naturally flow from that. And there's definitely a level of comfort and peace. And it becomes such an easy way to really win or lose, step away a little bit and loosen your grip on this, focus on the results and more just on the behavioral type things.
Do you mind if we switch over into parents?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, you know, listen, with youth sports, and I think even at uni nowadays, coaches are dealing with parents a lot more than they used to be. And so when you're working with coaches or the organization in their approach to, I hate saying the word dealing with parents, but working with parents, right? Like, what are some of the key messages you try to get across to them in that, like, here's the appropriate way to engage parents? So there's a really good balance of, you know, be the parent. Don't try to be the coach, and let's work together in your child's success. Like, what are some of the things that you try to get across to coaches and helping them to develop those kind of relationships?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important, just even what you just mentioned there, is that are we working with parents? Are we dealing with parents? Are we partnering with parents? And the language really kind of sometimes reveals our heart or our approach. And if we're just dealing or handling parents, which is what most of us do as coaches, it's what I've done in the past, then we actually create not only just a lot of problems downstream for us that come up throughout the year, including a lack of buy-in from players and parent emails and resistance to decisions that we make around playing time or strategy or whatever it is. Like, we don't just create problems, we miss a massive opportunity. If you have a desire to influence and impact young people, I would just first start by reminding everyone that, well, one of the key concepts around influence, if you really want to influence and help someone, is to influence their greatest influencer. Like, who are the biggest influences in young people's lives? Well, it's the parents.
Yeah,
so if I really want to have an impact, I should be able to have some sort of influence on those parents. And I had something that really profound that that happened to me about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. I had, in my previous book, The Culture System, talked about a sports parent that had become really volatile towards me in a situation. And that really hurt because I was really operating from a good place and trying to do the right things. But they had this misperception around me and my coaching. Well, they followed up, just randomly sent a text to me 6-7 years after that event. And they weren't apologizing. I never got the apology that I'd hoped for. But the father just said, "Hey, I just want to let you know, like, I'm often talking with my friends, and when we talk about our kids' sporting experience, I always say you were the best coach my son ever had. And not just because of what you taught him and how you helped him grow, but because of how your impact on me as a parent. Because you showed me how to be both kind and firm with my teenage boy who I wasn't doing a good job parenting at the time, essentially." That's essentially what the message was. Blew my mind to get that. I was like, I never thought that my leadership actually might impact the leadership of a parent. And that's not necessarily where we're always going to get with our parents, in our programs. But if we could show up and be a good leader ourselves and take care of our things and do things the right way, and then really try to partner and build a relationship with these parents where they can understand what we're trying to achieve, our vision, our mission in coaching, and then how we're going to actually intentionally go about that and show them a plan and that for what we're going to do to develop the culture and to invest in their kids and to create a great experience, then oftentimes they're ready to jump on board. But we so poorly miscommunicate that at the beginning or throughout the process around what we're doing that it's very hard. And sadly, the state of the culture is that parents just don't give trust, right? Maybe in 10, 20 years ago, we trusted coaches a lot more and we were more quick to say whatever the coach says, but now the culture is not that. And they're very quick to jump to conclusions, make judgments, and not trust, not even respect the coach's decision. And so it's fair or unfair. The reality is we have to work harder now than ever to earn that respect of parents and athletes.
Yeah, I thank you for that, because I think that one of the things that I'm noticing with the parents is we kind of are now having like two ends of the spectrum, in that we have the parents, in swimming who think their kid's going to be the next Michael Phelps and is putting so much pressure on them that the kid doesn't want a bar of the sport anymore. So they ruin the sport for the child, right? Or they're so disengaged that there's no involvement whatsoever. And in a way, I feel for these coaches because they're trying to figure out a way to work within both of those ends of the spectrum. And it is challenging for coaches to try to learn how to deal with these nuances now before coming up, right? Again, if you only paid attention to the coach you came up under, you probably didn't have to watch your coach do those kinds of things.
Yeah. It's definitely that there's that challenge of their level of engagement. What's the appropriate level of engagement? What I actually really would very practically work with coaches to do is actually to invite them into a relationship, not just in a personal relationship to support their son or daughter, but within the team that you're trying to build. And we've we do some really cool things. Like one thing, we've even had a swim team do this, which is a parent practice where parents show up and they participate in the practice. It's great in all sports. It gives them insight into how challenging it is to gives them insight into the coach. But also, most importantly, is just like it's a really cool like team building activity with the parents and the athletes, because maybe sometimes the athletes are coaching the parents, and their parents are out there and they're struggling in whatever sport it is, and it's kind of just funny, and the parents start to connect. And I think that at the end of the day, what team sports provide, even like a team sport like swimming, which I know is a little bit different than maybe basketball, but still there's a team aspect.
Mm-hmm.
What we want is we want community, we want connection, and that's what people are really craving today. And so if we can help parents build relationships and connections with other parents and other athletes, then they're going to be more kind of like balanced, I think, in a lot of cases, right? They're moving the focus off their child. And I think that's one of my biggest things I always tell parents when I speak to parent groups is it's not all about your child, right? Like your child, and we need to teach our children that like it's about focusing on other people, and sometimes the right balance between being really invested or not invested at all is just more so just being in that space with them, walking that journey with them, and being about things other than just our child, right?
Right. Exactly. And and we are helping to raise, young adults. So, and that's one of the things that I attribute, and a lot of people who have come up in sports, I'm sure you feel the same way, that sports has been just an amazing journey into let me put it this way. I don't think I ever would have been like the director of IT at Auckland University. I don't think I would have ever led an international sales force. I don't think I would ever have elevated into those leadership roles had I not learned from a young age how to be part of a team, how to be a constructive part of a team, how to handle defeat and how to handle success, even as, the right way in a team environment. And I think sports just gives so much to people. And, that's so when coaches are able to, I like that you're saying that really work hard at building a relationship with your parents, because we're doing more than just the sport. It's life. It's life skills, It's wonderful. So, talk to me about transformational coaching. What is that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way is to, compare it to transactional coaching, which is oftentimes people say is old school coaching. I think old school coaching is often how transactional coaching shows up. But I mean, we can all be transactional at certain points. It's when we move to a place where it's more, as a coach or as a leader, it's about what we can get, and we're looking to get more wins, get more success, get more validation. While every coach has their stated why. Why do you coach? Well, I coach to make a difference, right? Like that's aspirational why, and it hopefully it can become our purpose and something that drives us. But there's also other reasons why we coach. We coach for many reasons. I got into coaching because I love to compete. I got into coaching because basketball was so tied to my identity. And as soon as I stepped out of Division I athletics, I didn't know who I was. And so coaching, stepping into coaching helped to, be like this safe place for me. So it's really actually complex, our true why, all the reasons why we coach. And so when our why, our priority as a coach is more about wins, validation, those types of things, our own ego, then we're operating from a place of transactional coaching. And so we can resort to fear-based tactics or even just really soft, permissive coaching, right? We want to be liked more than we want to be respected by our athletes, right? So we're not demanding enough. When we're a place of transformational, we're focusing not on getting, we're focusing on giving the athletes an opportunity, giving them an opportunity, right? We can't force change, but to grow and to be successful, both in the pool, out of the pool, or on the court, off the court, right? We're really there focusing on giving. We're not focused so much on what we're getting. We see leadership as more of a responsibility, not a reward. Well, here I am, the head coach. Everybody needs to bow down and worship me here because I'm the all powerful coach, right? We
Right.
see respect as something that should be given, but also something that should be earned. It's just the transformational coach is, it's about other people.
Is that a concept that when you're approaching the coaches, do you think that's an easy concept for them to understand? And
that's a great question. I think when it comes to coaches, I think we all like to imagine that we're more in that transformational than that transactional place, because we understand and we know our hearts. And I really truly believe the majority of people in coaching have the heart for people, the heart to see kids be successful.
right.
But what happens is we are sleep deprived, we are frustrated, we are very, very busy. We feel the pressure of wins. We feel the pain of losses. We feel underappreciated by parents and athletes and administrators, and we feel ill-equipped to have the tools to make the change that we want. And in all those frustrations and disappointments and all those emotions, we just kind of sometimes tend to lose our way. It's like a parent, you come home after a long day's work and you love your kids and you want what's best for them, but you sometimes just don't give them your best. You're just worn down and you resort to just being short and snappy and the threatening parent, right? Instead of that parent that that's intentional. And so just forever, at some point, we can lose our way, or nobody's been there to really help us to really get clear on the type of impact that we want to make and what we need to do to make that impact.
So you mentioned the litany of like we're tired, long hours, and all that. So what do you think is really missing for coaches nowadays? Or what are some things? Let me rephrase this. What are some things that maybe clubs and universities can do for their coaches to help them through this? For swimming, as an example, we've just come off of short course season, championship season, right? So a lot of these coaches have been coaching all week, then they go to meets, and this has been anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks straight. So they've not had any time off, really, really long hours, standing on deck. So like, what are some things that you might be able to tell club leadership or university administration leadership on ways that they could support their coaches a little bit better? That might be too broad of a question. So you narrow it down as you feel.
Yeah. When I got into coaching, back, in 2000s, it was just like, hey, great. Thanks for signing up. Let's do a quick background check on you. Okay, here's a whistle. Good luck. And maybe like we covered some foundational course on the technical aspects of coaching. I think there's probably a little bit more training in coaching that's required today. I think the majority of it, though, is frustrating for coaches because it's not real, practical, and useful for them to address the real challenges. Like what we're expecting out of coaches is we expect coaches to be support the mental health of their athletes. We expect coaches to tailor their coaching style to what the athlete wants today. We expect coaches to win. We expect coaches to help players develop. We have all these other expectations, but are we actually giving them the tools to be successful in that? And so I think there's an element of, I've never been a big curriculum or training or type of guy, but I'm like, if we're going to do trainings, and we're going to educate coaches, let's do stuff that's really practical, not just ticking the box. Obviously, stuff has to tick the box as far as safety and compliance, and you got to know how to teach a stroke or this, different aspects of the sport. But when it comes down to what's most frustrating for coaches is not the fact that I don't know how to teach this stroke or how to whatever it is. It's the human element of sport that is the hard part of sport. It's a hard part of leadership, and we're just not equipping them with real tools in that from a cultural standpoint. So I think real education and training would be one. The other thing I would suggest is community, whether that's helping your coach be a part of another community externally or building a sense of community within your coaches where they're getting together through a group chat or a monthly Zoom or a monthly get together where coaches can just talk about what's going on for them. Get into little small groups, support groups, learning circles, huge. And a third thing would be coaching, mentoring within your program, developing those types of things where coaches are observing, giving feedback, helping to kind of hold each other accountable on different commitments that they might have made going into the season around how they want to do things, and just helping us to be more intentional. So training, community, and kind of coach or mentoring for sure.
I love it. Thank you for that. That's amazing. That really aligns with a lot with what we say as well. And I think that, there's a lot out there on the technical aspect. Again, I'm going to go back to swimming, so I apologize. But there's a lot out there. There's, several organizations that work really hard on the technical side of swimming. So stroke and performance training, all that. And that's great, but I agree with you. The part that's missing is the real actionable side of human nature, not the high level philosophy that they go back and go, I don't know how to apply this, right? But like real leadership techniques, real techniques on how to develop your staff as quality coaches, to include everything in the human element, all that kind of stuff, I think is where the gaps are. And, coaches that reach out to other, it doesn't have to be a consultant. Like it could be a mentor. It can be a peer mentor that's like really traveling along the same path. I do find that coaches are really, in my experience, maybe not yours, that coaches are apprehensive about aligning with other coaches unless they're just talking about technical stuff, because the other areas are kind of fraught and they feel like, oh, I don't want to admit that I'm having a problem in a certain area. But I think they kind of do themselves injustice, don't they, by not pairing up with someone who might be traveling the same road, who hasn't spoke up and said, I'm having problems in this area as well, and working through it.
Yeah, one of the best things I know you asked really early on in our conversation today was just around my own change and my own growth when I realized that I was kind of a bit of the problem within my culture. And it was, I was a basketball coach at the high school for 5 years and during my coaching journey. And my best mentor was the wrestling coach. And we would have lunch once a week to really just talk about what we were working on intentionally within the culture and leadership and share ideas. And that became a place where we would have that time where we're investing in that 30-minute lunch, so that at other times I might pick up the phone and call him and reach out to him, or he might call me when we're going through some stuff. So often it's by creating that space where people can come together to discuss ideas, best practices, challenges. You just, as a club administration, you can't force necessarily always we could create peer mentoring programs. I think there's value in that. I've helped some organizations do that, but I think really, you can try to create the conditions for those good things to happen, those groups to start to form and take shape. And I think that's there's a responsibility of club administrators in that, because I know like athletic directors, club directors, like that's a tough job. That's one where you're just constantly going, and you're a leader and you got so many coaches. It can be very hard to maybe offer that support that you really desire to offer every individual coach. So that's fine. Let's just find other ways to create those conditions for that to take place.
Yeah, open the door for that facilitation for them to meet other coaches. I like the fact that you met with a coach that was in a completely different sport. I think that's amazing. I think the thing is just get out of your own comfort zone or your bubble and reach out to another peer and try to get some peer mentorship. I mean, it's great to also go after those you aspire to be like, or you look up to as a mentor as well. But I think there's a lot of gold in having someone who may be traveling in the same circles and learning from them as well. So you both are kind of learning from each other. I think it's just, it's key for support, Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so tell our audience where they can find more about you and what you offer, your courses. I know you have a newsletter and then your books. So where can they find out about you?
Yeah, I mean, the quickest way just to kind of really start to dive into things would be to, pick up the Culture System and the Sports Parent Solution. Those are my two most popular books. They're on Amazon, Audible, Apple Books, all those places there. If you want just my newsletter and free resources, you can go to tocculture.com. I've got a podcast just on culture building in all sports, really interesting, unique guests, and that's Coaching Culture Podcast. And I think the big thing, like just speaking to the need in what we were just talking about there earlier with clubs and what do coaches really need, is I actually have a coach certification, a transformational coaching and culture certification.
Nice.
3-level different certification that's on my website that, we've had some amazing organizations in the last few years start to invest in their coaches. We've got athletic departments, we've got clubs, we've got coaches associations, and it's good material, it's good content that with actual real feedback for coaches, but it also is a really powerful way that how they're leveraging it for starting cohorts and study groups where coaches go through that content and then they get together to discuss it. So that's if people are interested in that, they can head on over to my website as well, tocculture.com, and I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at TOC Culture. I don't really like.
You're doing more than me, man.
Well, I'm not on there. I just have some people that are. I'm fortunate to have someone that posts everything for me there. So we have a lot of content on there for coaches, just practical tools stuff. So
great. So coaches, please reach out, and I believe that. You might feel like it's odd that I have someone who's in the same industry as I am on the podcast, but I feel like there's room for, my goal is to improve sport. So if that means, engaging, several different pieces of material and thoughts and, like certifications through different consultants and different organizations, whatever improves sport is the right path. So JP, I really appreciate you being on the show with us today. And hopefully some people will go to your site and buy your book. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Appreciate the opportunity to share with you and what you're doing as well in sport.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast so we can reach a bigger audience and help others such as yourself. And don't forget to visit our website, yoursportsresource.com, where you can find articles and tools as well as more info on how we can work together. Finally, remember, what is common sense isn't always common practice. Put what you learn into action. Don't just be good at it. Thanks, everyone.